the amount of time you're looking at is not significant.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 1:30 meeting this Wednesday. We have, and we got, we'll start with prosecutor's office, and I'm gonna have to cut this at 1:45 because he's got some prosecuting to do. So we'll just open it up. I think the purpose of this thing is we have the mental health tax coming up for renewal at the end of this year. And I think there's a portion of it that you guys use it for. I think that, so we're just trying to figure out how it's used in the different arenas. And I guess your thoughts on it.
So I guess with respect to our office, when this became a thing, I speculating 6 years ago, 5. I guess what effect it had on my office is there's certain positions within my office that are either fully, which is one position, or partially funded, part of the mental health sales tax dollars. So it's kind of a rundown. When the mental health sales tax was created, I was afforded a new position that was basically the therapeutic courts deputy prosecutor, which is the primary funding that my office receives. And at the time, that particular individual was tasked with our felony diversion program, drug court, meaning from start to finish. We receive referrals, we review the case, we review the standards, we approve them, send it up to drug court for their review. If they get in, they're in drug court, and that person also deals with drug court in and of itself, which currently is Tuesday afternoons for about 4 hours. And then any revocations that are dealt that need to be addressed, or graduations. So that person was doing diversions, drug court, and we also have our Superior Court mental health court, same processes. And right now that's Wednesday afternoons every other week for about 4 hours. The reason I know that is because I've been covering it lately on occasion. So as well as this particular job has also handled involuntary treatment hearings through the hospital, which are 2 days a week, which could be anywhere from 8 to 8:30 if there's some agreed stipulations, or it could be 8 past the lunch hour if there are contested hearings 2 days a week. So that is, now there's some different shuffling going on with the office, within the office right now, because staffing issues, attorney issues, caseload issues. So it's changed a little bit, but that's basically what that position is for, is to handle that particular caseload, as well as time permitted, some drug stuff, because obviously we're dealing with mental health and substance abuse related issues. So that's the primary funding to my office, is one DPA tied to those tasks.
Okay.
There's other reimbursements, like, let's just say for myself, which is like 0.02, which breaks down to 3 hours a month. My juvenile deputy, 0.03, which is 5 hours a month, which is probably low now. As well as 2 or 3 staff members within the office that are helping draft and process and file all the paperwork associated with therapeutic courts. Generally speaking, you have a confession and stipulation and multiple other documents that are entered by the court and reviewed with the defendant in court prior to entry into the therapeutic court. So, yeah, we're talking 0.02, 0.03, one point. That's the DPA, 0.03, 0.02, and I don't know how this one came about, but 0.01846 of an FTE salary. So that's kind of the breakdown now for funding purposes, which I don't know if this is 2022, but it comes out to about $165,000, at least on the list that I have in front of me. That might be slightly lower or lower or higher than that amount currently. As far as I'm aware, that's the extent of my office. and what it receives from the mental health sales
What
tax
it
dollars.
sees from that.
My apologies for being late. I never like being late, except to my funeral. So the behavioral health tax is used only in regard to drug court from your office's perspective.
Therapeutic courts or mental health related issues.
Hey, is there a drug court that is distinct from a behavioral court, distinct from from therapeutic court?
Well, by therapeutics, I mean drug court, mental health court, ITAs.
Oh, so this includes ITAs?
Yes. I had tasked that person. That's currently not how we have it right now, but yes. So I guess therapeutic is an umbrella term for all those different courts.
Okay, and what was the total amount of dollars?
What I have before me, and I believe this is 22, 165,000. About 134 of that roughly going to the FTE DPA.
Sorry?
Approximately 134,000 of that. So everything except for a 30,000 going to the full-time deputy position that's funded.
Yeah.
Maybe if you wish, I could ask you an unfair question.
Sure.
What is your thinking about the success of, are you positive on the behavioral courts?
I have a positive perspective of them. Generally, I don't know what our current, that thing called COVID kind of threw everything for a loop, criminal justice related. Now that we're back into the swing of, in-person drug court, in-person mental health court, in a brief discussion I had with my current deputy who's handling those, she's seeing real positive things right now. I think out of even Judge Warning, who I believe appeared recently, was pretty impressed with how well people were doing. It's not generally that everybody's doing well, but I think on last week's docket, if I recall Megan saying that, there was only 3 out of a large docket that kind of were not doing well, or, not getting, I'm not going to use the word stars because that's a literal thing that people get when they do great things, but I find it as an opportunity and it leaves it up to them. What the positive is for my office is it's a way to get a case out of the criminal track into a therapeutic setting. And it's basically in the hands of the defendant to either be successful or not. And if they're not successful, they have agreed that they are guilty to everything that they've been charged with and they will be sentenced accordingly. Obviously, if they graduate, they get the benefit of having the charges dismissed. The additional benefits to that are any restitution owed to a victim, who obviously we always get victims' input prior to entering somebody into a therapeutic court. And generally they're supportive of it. Any money owed to a victim, whether that's $100 for whatever it may be, or a few $1,000s, they're paid back within a much shorter time frame than if somebody just had a judgment sentence against them, restitution in the amount of $3,000. So I would, my personal opinion is it's a positive thing. You're obviously not going to see, 100 or even 90 or 80 or 70% success rate in graduations, but obviously there are consequences related to that. So I find it as an opportunity that's put in the person's hand. They're given the tools, and if they're not successful, they probably get a lot more time than what they were looking at had they resolved their case or whatnot. If they are successful, then good for them.
How do you define success?
Well, absolute success in my end would be, or I guess in my mind would be, regardless how long somebody had been dealing with substance abuse or perhaps erratic mental health issues, that they don't go back to drugs, or that they are, in the mental health sense, able to get on meds and maintain regulation of those meds. But I think I know where you're going with this is, what about statistics, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, which I don't think Adam's ever been able to provide.
It's that, but it's also a little bit more. We have a huge welfare system. So people are collecting funds all over the place. And presumably they were a problem here. And we put them through a system at fair expense that I think I will end up discussing overall at some point. And success should be defined as, instead of becoming a consumer of the taxpayer, it would be becoming a taxpayer and paying taxes and supporting society as opposed to draining society. And I never hear anybody define it that way. And I've also said pretty recently that about laws that are contrary to human nature. And anytime I ask someone who's in the business, they'll give you a success metric that doesn't make any sense at all. It's, well, they graduated. Okay, so lots of people graduate from various things. That doesn't make them productive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a good answer for that, but I find it a success because quite often the individuals that we deal with are not exactly one and done.
And how does this fit the equal application of the law onto people? So you've got this many people for this many slots on drug court?
Capacity of drug court for my office. Aside from time, I don't really think I can measure my office like, oh, I could have one DPA to only handle 50 or 100, individuals in drug court. That's probably something that Adam or Therapeutics would have to discuss with you guys. But, we're basically acting as a gatekeeper. And then we are there during the dockets, as well as obviously dealing with the workings of drug court. But nonetheless, our primary function is the gatekeeper.
But you yourself, as a PA, has to take a look at the folders that are sent to you as, we think this person would qualify. You have to look at it and say yay or nay, right?
Yes.
That's a pretty tough job, in my opinion. And it's really hard to say, to claim that everybody's going through the same process or being treated equally. How do I get before you on your desk? Have I committed 1 felony, 2 felonies, 3?
For drug court or mental health court purposes?
For the behavioral stuff.
There's a referral form that a defendant submits through their attorney to our office that, hey, we're interested in drug court or mental health court.
Okay, so it could be the first time I was picked up.
Yeah,
for some reason.
it could be the 10th time, whatever. But it all starts with a referral from the defense attorney.
Referral from the
A
counsel?
referral from the defense attorney.
Yeah.
So they initiate the process.
They submit a 1-page application with the name, the case number, substance abuse issue. So there's a few questions on there. And so they initiate the process, and then that goes to my therapeutics deputy to review.
And I know you got to get out of here, Ryan, and I will respect that. When I Google, treatment for in like our county, I get at least 12 different places that people can go for help with drugs. Why drug court? I guess I wonder at times, why do we tie up the courts with this when we can refer out to all these different agencies? And maybe it makes sense. I don't know. I just see all these agencies and I wonder why we don't work with them sometimes instead of just tying up courts.
Well, I know drug court contracts with, I think it's 4 different treatment
they?
agencies, specific ones, and I'm blanking right now on a couple of them, but there are 4 specific, I believe it's only 4 that they, deal with through the therapeutic courts. The reason that they are obviously being addressed in the criminal justice system is because they got themselves in the criminal justice system. I mean, if somebody's dealing with a substance abuse issue on the street or a family member or whatever, there's nothing that prevents anybody from going to get treatment, right?
Right.
Whether it's inpatient, outpatient. Now, obviously, money can be an issue, but obviously there's state benefits or whatnot. But the reason the drug courts created is because obviously their issues partially so have thrown them into the criminal justice system, and it's a way to address it. Now, on the question of if somebody was just picked up on let's say a drug possession, that's probably a case you could potentially refer to some outside agency or third party, but a lot of what we're dealing with are victim related crimes. So obviously part of my job is to ensure, obviously victims, are made whole, that they're a part of the process and whatnot. So you can't, hypothetically speaking, you have let's just say a theft in the 2nd degree that amounted to $1,500 out of somebody's garage, and they're okay with that person going drug court. That's not just something that you could refer out to some kind of treatment because the victim's left holding the bag. So.
However, that's sort of independent of the drug court. If he comes before you and you say, no, this is not eligible for drug court, he still owes the $1,500. And you will do whatever you can to get restitution.
Then the case proceeds as any other case through the court system, whether that's obviously a trial or a resolution, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I'll respect your time.
I will expect that June 7th, I will be back. here
Maybe
to
come back
further this
and-
discussion.
Yeah. I'd appreciate that.
I got courted too. I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah. No, we appreciate it, Ryan. Thank
Good
you
seeing
very
you, Ryan.
much.
So Kelly, June 7th at what time? 1:30. I'll blame you guys for.
Blame Dennis. He's not here. Yeah. So Ian's not gonna be here. Okay. 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 Did you have? Okay, come on up.
This is not The Price is Right.
Yeah.
Come on down.
Come on down. We're gonna fill the time here.
All right. Hello, Deborah Gardner, Cowlitz County Treasurer. I have a interlocal agreement on the agenda for next week, and I just wanted to let you guys know what it was, because since it's an interlocal agreement, it needs the board's signatures on it.
Okay.
Cowlitz County has an agreement. We've had it since 2009 with, it was SWAD, which is Southwest Washington Agency for Aging and Disabilities. And we've been their treasurer. And they have, the contract needed to be, or the agreement needed to be updated, and they've also changed their name. So we've updated the agreement, worked with the prosecuting attorney's office to get it all approved by them, and just need your signature next week at the board meeting.
So the name now is ADSW, AAADSW.
Yes,
Did I say that adequately?
you did.
Okay.
So the agreement basically is you take care of the funds for
Yes,
them.
we, they deposit all their funds with us. We do their investments with them. They have their own bank account. But when they have payroll or accounts payable, we just move the money over to their account to cover their expenses. But yeah, they're not one that's required to be, we're not required to be their treasurer. I think they maybe were in Clark County. I don't know the whole history of it, but I think at one point they were in Clark and moved up and had this agreement with Cowlitz.
They use us just because it's convenient? And can you define that convenience?
I don't know the history of why they came here in 2009 and asked the county to do these services for them. I just know we've been their treasurer since then.
Okay. And they pay a small fee?
Mhm. Yeah, they, in the past, they just we would just calculate how many transfers through the bank that we did. And I mean, we just charge them for the fees, and instead of, calculating that, we just took an average and we're just going to charge them a monthly fee and have them pay once a year instead of invoicing them monthly. So that makes it easier as well.
A little easier. Yeah. I don't have any problem with it. Yeah.
All right. And since I've come up here, I just thought I'd share the collections for the property taxes.
Oh, yeah.
I ran some numbers up through this year. Since the 30th fell on Sunday, it carried into May 1st was the due date. So last year for 22, our total collections at this time was 55.46%. And this time for 23, it's 54.9%. And our collections are always pretty good. For the last 4 years, if I look at the end of year collection rate, and this is just during the year of that assessment. So like in 19, just for 19, back in December of 19, we had a total collection rate of 97.67%. And in 20, it was 98.29%. In 21, it was 98.32. And in 22, it's 98.38. No, the issue is if people don't pay the property taxes, then they get foreclosed on. So the taxes do get paid, and we don't have an issue with not being able to collect the taxes. So our rates, our collection rates are well. I understand you guys had some questions on the investment pool with Kathy on Monday. She gave the rate of like 1.34%, and that was for the first quarter on what our pool was earning. But that is just the first quarter. And if you annualize that, times that by 4, our pool for that first quarter was earning 4.78%.
On
Yeah,
an annualized basis.
Correct.
Yeah.
but 4 times 1.23 is 4.92.
Yeah, and there's I was talking to the advisors about that, and the rates, it doesn't come out exactly. There's, purchases that are happening, and we also amortize the interest. And so there's some different things that are going on with the pool that.
Yeah, I understand that part. I went crazy thinking that was the APR,
Mhm.
the 1.23, and I thought, this is not right.
Yeah,
But in fact, I'm surprised at 4 point, how much did you?
it was 4.78.
Okay. So off of that, we pay a percentage to operate the fund, right?
Mhm.
And that's 0.5%, I remember, or slightly over half.
It's 3 basis points.
Okay. I'm surprised it's quite as high as it is. That must be really pleasing.
Are you talking about the interest rate?
Yeah, the
4.78.
yeah.
So before we started this pool, most of our funds were at the LGIP, which is the Washington State Local Government Investment Pool. And those funds are short-term, and with the short-term rate right now is, it falls along with the Fed rate. And so I looked today in the rate at the state pool for today was, I can't remember exactly, was 5.14. So, and at the end of April, it was 4.93.
That's my investment history. I jumped on the wrong train.
Well, when they get inverted,
That's so
you don't
weird.
always expect that. And so I don't know how long that can
Well, and
last, but
mhm.
yeah, I get it. You look at it and you go, wow.
I think you're doing the right thing, even though LGIP is stronger today. Tomorrow, I think it'll be not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, with the advisor and their strategy is to purchase at the right time, and they're watching it real closely because there's so many things. Then we had the banking crisis.
I gotta laugh at you. The right time?
Well,
You've got a crystal ball that you
yeah,
need to
that
sell.
whole crystal ball thing that none of us have,
Yeah.
but their knowledge of all this is better than mine. And we it's hard because we're trying to take advantage of the rate at the state pool, but we know that's not going to last. So we're building the portfolio so that when it does drop, we will have some longer term investments that will help keep our rate up there. So
By long-term investment still in a true treasury of some kind.
and that was, I looked at that too, because of that debt ceiling scare
Yeah.
with the, we have 3 treasuries in our portfolio right now. And one of them matures on May 31st of 23. There's 2 other ones. One matures on 10/15 of 23 and one matures on 10/15 of 24. And they're talking the delayed payments starting June 1st. I don't think we don't know what's going to happen, but we're not.
So in that case, let's say those default for some reason. I don't think that'll happen, but how do you allocate to ADSWA and to the general fund or to other funds? The loss, is it proportional to how much you've got in there?
Yes, yeah. Yeah. With the feds, if these were to, how that whole,
A lot of things would be.
yeah, it
Yeah.
would be,
Yeah.
I don't know how that, I'm sure they're going to resolve this, but if, treasuries are supposed to be the safest investment out there. And if we don't have that, then I don't know what our government will have.
I always find it interesting how, for the average individual, not in politics, it gets up in the morning, goes to their job, does everything correctly, and then the Federal Reserve Chairman says blah, and the person next day has lost their job. Maybe is going to lose their home in a week. It's like, there's something really wrong with the system like that. You'll take care of that?
Wish I had all the answers.
What's the interest rate on those treasuries that you just cited?
Let me see if I,
Oh, and did we pick them up new or on the resale market?
I didn't I don't have that information with me on that. I just put down the maturity dates. I can get that. for
It's
you,
just
though.
idle curiosity on my part.
Yeah, I can send that to you.
I'm trusting that the chairman will put the hook on me at the right time.
No, it's,
I'm trying to help you.
I
Fill the
know,
time.
keep things going, but it's okay. For what it's worth, I sat in, I think the first finance committee I sat in with that group reviewing and I've sat in quite a few different groups reviewing over the last 40 years. These people, they seem pretty credible to me and looking at what they're doing, I was pretty comfortable with their approach to it. So,
Yeah, they've been in the government portfolio advising for many, many years. And Deanne, the gal that was on our meeting, and she's at the GFOA this week speaking to that group on government investing. And she's really knowledgeable about all of this. So yes, they're.
do we used to, and I trying to remember how long at a certain intervals, we would have another firm just come and audit everything just to confirm that what we were seeing was correct stuff. I don't know if we do that at government levels or not, but
We can do that. And I have seen other county treasurers that have their own pools. They have another party come in and audit it. And another thing is the state auditors will look at this really closely. when they
state
come in.
auditors look at it too. Yeah,
Mhm.
so you do have one checkpoint there.
Yes.
It's not that I expect people to do bad things, but it's nice if they know they have a chance of being audited, it kind of tells them that they should be okay.
Well, and we have our investment policy in place, and each month the reports will show, that if something's out of compliance with our policy, their program checks all of those, and that shows on our reports as well.
Yeah.
And then we make the final decision if we want to purchase and make sure that it fits within, we're comfortable with what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
All right. Do you have any more questions?
Don't ever ask that.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're still, okay. And I know Commissioner Weber is in here, but what we chatted about a little bit yesterday afternoon on timeframes for the ARPA.
Yeah,
I guess I'd be open to what you have thoughts on that. Well, let me start with my thoughts. Any of these capital projects, I've watched them. A lot of these run. 2 years is not a long time.
2 years is a long time, but it's quite normal.
Yeah. So thinking about this, the discussion yesterday, and it's kind of rolling around in my mind overnight, it seems to me, I think we have to have some pretty concrete answers by the end of this. By the end of, it has to all be completed by 26. So 24 would be a drop dead date for me, if not even a little earlier.
Yeah, I'd probably be earlier, but that's.
Yeah. I'd almost, when we're in 23, yeah, probably the first quarter or by the second quarter of 24.
We're still,
Allocations should be set to people that we think can get that done by the end of 26.
Yeah, that the construction phase itself can take to 2 years, but there's always that six months to a year planning ahead of it time. So I'm thinking the earlier we decide to do this, the better. And it's probably a little early now, but toward the end of this year, probably okay, is my
Yeah.
guess. We should get some indication that the large amount I'm thinking of is the exit 21 amount. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me before, but I'm pretty comfortable moving that into back into infrastructure with public works doing something. And then if we have to, we can pull that out. So I think it's a commitment that we should hold till 2024, that 2.6, but
Yeah,
it'll be too late to decide then.
yeah. And then if the other two, Riderwood and Shadow Mountain do get the federal, if the federal allocation does come in,
Even
there's
better.
another 3.4 roughly for allocation. Hmm.
Kind of a discussion with, hopefully, I think we're gonna have within a month or so, the other
Yeah,
requests. Yeah,
you guys, you listened to that a little bit yesterday, right? Did you, any of you listen to that online? Any thoughts on it? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. What? While you're here, I had a question on opioid funds. You wanna? You talked, we talked yesterday and you mentioned it in the reading of it, and I haven't read it. Sorry, I didn't. It's not what I did last night. But the definition of what you can use it for is pretty broad. It seemed to be pretty broad.
There's several pages of options. So I think there are some areas that are a little more broad. There are some really specific things, like it calls out, expanding availability of Narcan, for example. So that's really a specific thing. Other things are a little bit more broad. So it just kind of depends.
Does it? How about facilities? And I hate to almost say this because I don't want. I'm just trying to get in my mind the whole gamut that can be used. And I guess what brings that up to me is I know at some point in time, and we've talked about, we've punted this down the road so long that the Hall of Justice, and can you, I don't know, just is there a way it can be used in facilities if it's a structure that's to help mitigate or help do some of this stuff?
you've got a future in law school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, without having really thoroughly studied all of the uses, I think that would probably be a good question to pose to legal. But I think, if we were looking at facility costs that were directly related to a substance use type program, then we could probably make a connection there. But that's just me.
Yeah.
So, which gets tricky, the Hall of Justice is used for so many
Yeah.
different things. So if it was to set up a courtroom for the use of drug court, for example, that would probably be.
It just always gets back to me is I just hate seeing, well, we got these dollars. We're going to hire this group to help these people and you're perpetual paying salaries. I'd like to have something in place that there is long-term to help versus, because at some point in time, those funds run out, right? And then who picks up the salaries for that? Well, I know who picks up the salaries, the taxpayers do, and it's in my world, that's not fair. I'd rather, if you can use it for facilities or some kind of structure that will serve the purpose for a long period of time. That's always kind of the tangent I get off on. Since I can't give it back to the people.
That is correct. You are not allowed to. When we
Yeah.
had that ARPA money, I looked into returning it to people.
That would be my first option always, but we don't have that option.
Yeah.
I did talk yesterday a little bit with Wahkiakum County, and it sounds like they are interested in how we could work
Good.
together for the opioid abatement
Good.
council. So I think that it sounded like we were on the same page with what that could look like.
Yeah,
And
I think that'll be good
yeah,
with us in our two major cities and Wahkiakum, that'd be a good fit.
yeah, I think so
Yeah.
too. So.
When it comes to drug abuse, I wonder, do you know anything that you can tell us about Narcotics Anonymous? Do we have an active group?
I'm not up on the groups that are currently active. I want to say we do, but I don't know that for sure.
How about AA? Do we have a group?
I'm
that is
pretty sure we
active?
do have AA, and I actually, for some reason, I feel like I heard that there was another type of group starting similar, but maybe specific for. Well, now I have opioids on my mind, so I wanted to say like an opioids anonymous group. Anyways, I think there was another one I had heard about recently that I went, oh, that's different, but I'll have to look and see if I can find out.
Reason I bring that up is those two groups are kind of the right thing. It's people in the same trouble or having been through the same trouble, trying to take care of each other, and they always operate on a shoestring. And I scratch my head and see if I could help them, but I always think, I think that that's a double-edged sword. They start to get dependent on funding, and we will have destroyed a thing that is, in my book, the only one that really does work in a permanent way.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some people, in the room there before we did Zoom, and they've been in and out of these recovery programs. It took them 5 times as one case before it actually did stick.
Yeah. This isn't anything different than I've said over time, but people recover when they make the final decision to do it. I think they try things because it'll get them out of stuff, but
Yeah.
it doesn't always stick unless they're willing to make that change. And I have a nephew that's been through drug court now, I think, and he's done really well. But I think knowing his personality, just the fact that he might go to jail would have cleaned him up, and not every people have that fear. So I always wonder where the point is. I know there's a lot of people that go through this, but a lot of it is because, well, if I do this, then I don't have to go to jail, or I don't have to do this or that. And I'd much rather them really want to get clean. So, and I'm always disappointed that we have a lot of, like I said, get on there and Google drug rehab or drug help or whatever in Cowlitz County, and you'll find about a dozen of them.
Yeah.
And it seems we do a horrible job as a community of coordinating with all these folks who all tend to want to get our own thing and do our own thing. And at least that's the way it looks from my view. I don't know why we don't do a better job of all coordinating use amongst everyone.
Yeah, underlying in what you're saying is do I dare try this example? Do you know what an azeotrope is? If you wanted pure ethyl alcohol, you wouldn't be able to get the H2O out of it. You get naturally about 95% of alcohol and the rest of it H2O, and you could evaporate as long as you would like, and you'd still end up with the same proportion. And the idea is that in order for you to get the other 5%, things are done really pretty drastically, like they put benzene in it, which has more attraction to the H2O molecules, and you can evaporate that off. But what you have left over is an azeotrope with some H2O and some benzene. Instead of being 95% ethyl alcohol, you're now about 99.5%. But you still have 5%, or 0.5%. How this ties into it is that we do everything emotionally. We talk about, we've got to solve these problems. Well, we can't solve the problems 100%. So then the question comes in, what is an efficient approach to get a maximization? You know, and in economics classes, they teach you how to do the calculus and say, okay, that's the number of machines I should buy.
Yeah.
And yet we've got this thing like no child left behind, you know, that's just jingoism, and it misleads people to thinking that there are solutions for all kinds of people. And they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. Aren't you glad you came up to the chair?
They should be here any minute.
Yeah.
And OPD isn't able to come.
Ian forgot and went home for the day.
Oh.
Probably remind him of that next time I see him.
So how do we shift to something where these welfare programs actually help but don't hinder? Like right now, I'm pretty sure they all hinder. That's because they try to do too much. And the accounting is always done by the people who are receiving the pay for doing the work.
Yeah.
And that's very, it's not right.
Yeah. I don't know if I have an answer that aren't. I know it's tough at times to define the line between help and enable. And it's probably different for different people, but once you move into enable, there's no reason for them to get help. I mean,
Shall we hear from the citizens?
if they want to talk, sure. No. It's not often you get us all to yourself. Right. I know it. Yeah.
How about now?
Yeah.
I was curious about drug court, and it's too bad the PA couldn't stick around, but I don't really understand the drug court when even with the new Blake decision, drug possession is a gross misdemeanor, which is nothing for most people.
It's
So is
a
the drug
little
court
more
for-
than nothing, I think. But if you're looking for a job, they don't ask you. No, they probably ask you, and you have to specify. If they ask you, I don't know how they would look at a gross misdemeanor.
Well, I know most people I know that have been through drug court, gross misdemeanor wouldn't scare them or push them to anything. But currently the drug court is for crimes related to drugs, right? Because drugs aren't currently a felony.
Listen to, I think that's accurate assessment. Listen to the prosecutor talk is if they do this, then whatever penalties are forgiven. So it's more about, you could make that case. It's more about the crime than it is,
That's what it sounded like to me, it was like
than it is the
theft. And
addiction.
so if they could, maybe you could say, like, I stole because I was on drugs, or I needed money for drugs, or I was, you know, a drug dealer got robbed or something. To me, it doesn't even seem like drug court if it's not for possession. Like if you're a criminal that committed violence or a theft, to me, that shouldn't be a, you know, like a drug rehab type of situation. You cross the line for like a therapeutic court, in my opinion. You should be, you know, treated more in a criminal court. But it's hard for me because I've known several people that have gone through drug court and they're still clean, you know, but that was back when drugs were felonies. And so they got that fear of God put in with a felony hanging over their heads.
Yeah, and my nephew falls in that category.
Yeah. So it's, you know, I know several, and so that's kind of, I have mixed feelings about it.
Well, before we came online, chatting with the prosecutor, he said it'll probably show itself in the cities before the county.
Yeah.
And seeing as they arrest people for gross demeanor and what happens to them at that point in time. So that may be where you kind of just keep your eyes open, get an indication of what it's going to do.
Yeah. And that is one of the biggest things the mental health tax goes to, is drug court, or no? That's just a small chunk of it.
I think the majority of it's probably
It's a
drug court
small
related.
chunk.
Yeah.
Small chunk.
Yeah, I think the biggest consumer now has got to be the sheriff's office and OPD and well, the courts.
Yeah, we have, for 2023, looks like about $1 million going towards therapeutic courts. So that includes drug court, Hope Court, Safe Court, a little bit
Yeah.
of that. Yeah.
What's the total of what percentage is the million out of the total for? I know I'm not supposed to ask you questions, but is that like half or 10%
Of what we collect.
of the total mental health tax? Yeah. Or is there a rough estimate? I don't need exacts.
We collect close to 4, maybe not at 4, but pretty close to 4, I think.
Hold on.
Oh, she's prepared.
No, it's, we collect over $1 million a year, or have been, I think.
It crept up over 2 million, and then in 2022, we brought in just over 3.1 million. We have a little bit in the bank, so we started the year with about 5.4 million.
So maybe on average, drug court uses a half to a third of the tax.
I think it's about 36%.
Okay.
That's what my
about
pie
a
chart
third.
says, and you're welcome to take this. if
Yeah,
you'd
I
like.
had one of those months
Okay.
ago. Sorry I didn't bring it.
No, that's okay.
But yeah, so I have mixed feelings about drug court, and I have, you know, only one feeling about the mental health tax. It should be on the ballot at this point. But it's kind of like what the PA said with like making victims whole with the financially. So it's interesting that they got to go to drug court and they got to pay the restitution, but you're still being taxed for this system that is just that only there to get them out of basically being affected by their sentence. It's like, this is your escape route paid for by the victims that you victimized, you know, which that could be applied to anything, but
Yeah. Well, I think it actually started, Ryan said about 5 years, but I think we're closer to 2012 or 13 when that actually kicked off.
Yeah, 2012 or so. It might have been
And-
13 when it started being
And
collected.
I think the use of it is morphed over the years a little bit from where
Yeah.
it started. So it's certainly a good time to review because it's been a decade. little over a decade.
Mhm.
And so it should be reviewed and make sure we're,
and even just taking a step back, it's like, has it had an effect on the mental health? I mean,
Yeah.
look at the streets, or just, you know, have conversations, you know,
Yeah.
around town, or interactions with people.
yeah.
Even like Longview, you can't even hardly walk to Civic Circle because it's just loaded with people that mean you a lot of harm. So yeah, I don't know. For me, 10 years, it's like, let's let the people vote on it. So if they really, really are in love with it, they can keep drug court and everything else going.
The problem with that is if it's a tax by the board can undo it. If it's a tax that the people have passed, it's very difficult to undo.
Right. Right.
So, and then we put the sunset clauses in here so that it forces us to review things.
Review it at least.
And I think that all things in government should have a sunset clause on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything else for me?
Yeah. Let me ask, so are you for or against just a priori with only the partial information you have?
With what I have now, and like I said, I've known people that have been helped, but I don't know anybody that's been helped since drugs were no longer a felony. I think that was literally what gave drug court its teeth. I think that's gone now. So it's hard for me to say because I do know people's lives that have literally turned around because of it, but it was from the felony.
So the picture I have based, well, I have to admit I'm confused. I have sat in on a couple or more drug courts, and it's pretty darn interesting. I see adults looking up at the judge as if the judge is their mom and dad, and it's a weird mechanism. But in your nephew's case, did he commit a crime other than the drug possession?
Just the drug possession. And
Okay.
and he works in that field now. Works with inmates.
As a counselor?
Mhm.
Yeah. So it sounds like the folks you were involved with made a mistake. They got an opportunity under the gun to rectify it, and that has worked out. So that original sin got sort of washed out. I'm wondering if that's typical of drug court. I think it probably is.
Your observation of the people and the way they look at the judge. My nephew still is very good friends with those people, and
I'm sorry.
he's still very connected with those folks and their friends, and he still looks up to them. So the way you were describing the people and their interaction with the judge seems to be more the norm than
Yeah.
not.
I think you can't get there unless you have some kind of, you can't be the career criminal if you,
Right.
the thing I saw. It's really strange. We've destroyed the family, so that's an outcome of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have actually the two cases that I really know in detail. Though I know the one was just possession, but the other one, I think she had committed theft as well. But you know, it is incredible because she was a waitress at Stuffy's, and she waited on the cop that busted her and put her through that whole situation. And it was like meeting a hero for her, the cop that busted her and put her through that whole process. So it was very interesting.
And everything is now
Yeah, she's doing great.
all good.
Yeah.
And then there is a flip side. Another nephew from another side of the family that has had all kinds of opportunities through that, and he still hasn't got it figured out.
Yeah, I know more than more of those stories than the success stories.
Yeah.
But
Again?
I know more of the kind of repeat failure stories than the success stories, but I have a few that are success stories. So I'm torn on it. Like if I could just wave my hand on it, I'd probably end it in the tax and in the drug court. But it's hard to say if they would have up in the legislature maybe reinstated the harsher penalty.
Well, as the chairman says, though, if you really want help, It really should come from within you,
Yeah.
and there are many options around.
Oh, absolutely.
In fact, he said at least a dozen on,
Yeah, when I Googled it,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
I see they're here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim, you want to come sit with me? Okay, so we are here to talk about Meals on Wheels with Lower Columbia CAP. We had originally talked about this program. We typically have to do a public hearing when we have a new grant application to do for this program. The state is doing a little bit different this year, so they're not doing a full grant application, but we still wanted to give an opportunity for CAP to come and share about the program. And so I'll turn it over to Tammy to kind of give an overview of what the program looks like. At some point, I'll need to circle back with the board about getting sort of a go ahead on moving forward with letting the state know we're continuing with Meals on Wheels, or if we wanted to look at something different so we can process the amendment. So I will turn it over to Tammy.
Hi there, good afternoon. I'm Tammy Davies. I'm the program manager for senior nutrition at CAP. There's two parts to the senior nutrition program, and we're requesting CDBG grant dollars to help fund those. The funding request is equivalent to 20% of our budget, so it's very necessary for us. It's important that we continue services, and those dollars are really focused on our more rural areas. We serve community lunches in 5 locations throughout the county: Kalama, Riderwood, Kelso, Castle Rock, and Woodland. Each site serves 1 meal a week. There's about 25 people that on average that participate, and they get 1 hot meal a week at that location. The average age is 78 right now. Lunch is open to anyone 6 years older. There is a suggested donation of $4 a meal to cover some of the costs of the site. But we do target low income seniors, so $4 isn't always realistic. We pay rent for our sites, and all are inspected and permitted by the Department of Health. We provide nutritional education, fraud and scam alerts, programs that help with home modification and maintenance, utility discounts, and anything else that we can think of that would be useful to our participants. A dietitian does an annual visit to each site and typically provides higher level nutrition education. For instance, there's a lot of questions around vitamin K and blood thinners, so it's always a very popular topic, and she can come and address those concerns. 3 of the sites have had programs in place that allow for high school kids to come and have lunch with the seniors. So they volunteer, they serve lunch, and then they sit and eat with the seniors. So it's kind of like seniors with seniors. And we call it Bridging the Generations. It was started at the Castle Rock Senior Center and spread to Riderwood, and then we have a program at Woodland as well. Sadly, those are coming to a close with the school year, but we look forward to restarting them in the fall. We have had volunteers from fire departments and nursing students from LCC that come and take blood pressures and talk to participants about their health and well-being. We really try to keep it social, engaging, and informative. So it's the nutritious meal is just like the bonus part of it.
I got to say, I met 4 of the kids at Castle Rock City Council on Monday, because the senior center gave these 4 kids scholarships to places they're going. So, yeah.
It's a well-loved program there. Yeah. The second part of our program is the home delivered meals, so most often called Meals on Wheels. We provide tailored nutrition to individuals based on their needs. Our meals are age appropriate, portion controlled, and meet heart healthy and diabetic guidelines. Our goals are to keep carbohydrates at 50 grams or lower on average. We keep calories from added sugars under 10%. Sodium is kept below 740 milligrams. Every meal provides vitamins A, C, and D, as well as calcium and fiber, and all menus are approved by a dietitian. We've recently acquired a subscription for nutritional analysis software. This is going to allow us to expand our menu to include meals suited for those with chronic kidney disease and renal failure. And that's a big issue in our area. It's been a need for a couple of years, and we're excited about being able to meet that. We're also expanding our vegetarian and gluten-free options, as well as textured meals. All home delivered meal recipients are assessed for eligibility. It's not something you can just call up and ask for it and get it. Our assessment's pretty invasive. We ask about your abilities to bathe, dress, toilet, stand, and walk. We ask about your teeth, your vision, your hearing. We ask about who comes in and out of your home, who manages your medications, your money, who takes you shopping, and a lot more. We try to get a really clear picture of what's happening in a home to make sure that we're pairing up the right services for their needs. So like if you tell us you can't go grocery shopping because you don't have transportation, you are considered homebound, but you are still able to stand and prepare a meal, you're not eligible for Meals on Wheels. We're going to try and put like homebound USDA commodities in place or something to help alleviate that food insecurity, but still meet your needs. There are 30,000 people age 60 or older in Cowlitz County, and we are currently serving 131 of them. Our program does not meet everybody's needs. It's not the answer for everyone in every situation, but it does fit for several. That 131, it means a lot to them. And we have served over 10,000 meals from January through April this year. The majority of our clients are referred by doctor's offices, the Area Agency on Aging and Disabilities, APS, care facilities, including the hospitals, and also family members that live out of the area. Our most vulnerable clients that live within delivering distance from CALSO receive hot meals every weekday. Three routes go out each day at 11, and the meals are delivered by 12:30. The client will get a friendly visit from drivers they become familiar with, and a meal that includes a hot tray with an entree inside, along with a cold bag that contains milk, a wheat roll with margarine, and typically a salad and or fruit. The meal's ready to eat. All the client needs is a fork. These meals are delivered within a timed window and are temperature controlled for safety. Other clients receive frozen meals one time a week. They will get up to 7 meal trays that are frozen. They will also get fruit cups, a loaf of bread with margarine, and fortified powdered milk if they choose it. These meals are all prepared in our central kitchen in Kelso by one full-time chef and one part-time cook. We produce approximately 1,200 meals a week that meet the standards that I spoke about earlier. We have over 25 volunteers that either deliver meals or help out in serving at the meal sites. Our volunteers have their food handlers cards, have gone through orientation, are aware of our policies and procedures, and we do annual training refreshers. All drivers are background checked and act as our ears and eyes on clients. They pay attention to what's normal for their clients and report on anything concerning. We're able to intervene often before something becomes a crisis because of this check-in. The people enjoy them as well and benefit greatly from the social connection to the community just as much as they benefit from the meal. We have 3 routes covered by a partnership with LifeWorks, where their clients deliver meals to our clients with supervision. It's working out really well, and the young men that are doing the deliveries really enjoy the work, and the clients really enjoy having them come to their home. Our meal costs average $10.50 a meal. This includes food, packaging, labor, and delivery. This is a significant cost savings over facility care, which might be necessary without us. Facility care is averaging over $300 a day right now. So we are saving taxpayers' dollars in the long run by keeping seniors healthy and safe in their own homes. We also help with depression and social isolation because of the social connectiveness to the community. So the program is open to the public for procurement every 4 years, and no one has applied or been interested or shown interest in over a decade. And I'm sure it's because it's not a fully funded program, which is why we're here and asking for these dollars today. So I just hope you'll support the program moving on and fund us and let us continue to do the great work that we do.
So I know you go out to Castle Rock
Yes,
once a week or whatever it is.
Castle Rock once a week, Riderwood.
And you head out to Riderwood for those people, things
Yep.
I learned from talking with you before, just trying to recall them. And
Yep.
so, and LifeWorks teams up with you now to
Yeah, we have a
help do
partnership
some of that.
with LifeWorks for 3 of the routes. It's a good partnership. We try to collaborate with others. We've had like Heritage Bank sponsored a route and they would send employees on their lunch breaks. And that worked out really well for a long time. The pandemic took a toll on some of those relationships. And so we're rebuilding those now, but we hope to rebuild them all and have those
Yeah.
collaborations back in place.
And I know from our conversations before and my concerns with the hot meals versus the frozen,
Yeah,
we had some conversation if you could, and you weren't opposed to collaborating with a school district or something if they could.
right.
If they can meet all the standards that the government has set out for you.
We have explored that in the
Yeah.
past. It's been a few years, but we did explore it, especially in Cathlamet and Rossburg. We were trying to look for ways to meet their needs down that
Yeah.
way. Restaurants seem very excited about it until they find out what the standards are. And I mean, I don't blame them. They have a really small margin for profit. And it is difficult to have like 6 people that you have to make this meal for and have that available 5 days a week. And then dietitian approved in advance and everything. So
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing to do, but we are definitely open to it and always looking for better ways to serve. And if we could get hot meals out to some of those locations, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And school districts, those are difficult contracts to do.
Yeah.
I started looking into it and they're very complex.
Probably so. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a ton of questions because I had the opportunity to sit down with her and answered quite a few of what you did. I was glad you explained the price because you explained that to me there. Initially we were looking at a higher deal, but it was something in the accounting that you had to do per
Well,
government regulation.
We have several different pots of money for several different, so
Yeah.
Determining the average cost of meals is $10.50. For some programs, it might be closer to 14.
Yeah.
It depends on the dollars and what we're allowed to bill for. So in the grand scheme, because I'm only talking about Older Americans Act funding right here. We also do Medicaid meals. And we have a partnership with a medical facility that we provide meals for people that are discharging home and they're trying to lower readmissions. So,
Okay.
and they all pay different rates. So those points are different. Their reimbursement rates are different.
So you provide meals for more than just Meals on Wheels there?
We do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
So, so it was a rough spot to be in when you're gonna question good deeds. In the past, I'd asked, and I got escalating prices. It started out at like $9 per meal, and then the next year it was 12, and then the next year was 15, something like that. And can you explain to me what who is not on the ball in answering that question?
So, I mean, we use this money primarily for rural areas. So, I mean, some of it depends on how many people we have serving in the different areas. The report that we had to use for the Department of Commerce only allowed us to report on brand new clients and those meals. So, I mean, if I got 10 clients this month and 2, 3 months from now, it skews the numbers. I can't, my financial guy would be able to explain that better, I'm sure, but those numbers were based on the report that what we were allowed to turn in for reimbursement through the grant. And if I only served 2,300 meals in the appropriate area, and that came out to $12.50 a meal, I mean, that's what it came out to. But 3 months from now, it could be that I'm serving a lot more people in there, and now it's $8 a meal for that number of people. And that's where the pots of money, it makes it difficult to say, like I'm not making sense right now. I can see it on your face.
Well, here, let me help you. It really doesn't matter. Lots of corporations keep multiple sets of books for different purposes.
Right.
And I'm asking a very, very simple one. It doesn't matter. I'm only asking about a number that's the average across over what you're trying to ask for us. It's called Meals on Wheels. And so I'm trying to ask, how much does a meal cost?
1046.
And then I asked you, it used to be higher, it used to be lower. What's the scoop? And I don't have an answer yet.
So. Okay. Alona, would you like to help out?
You want to, you're welcome to use that microphone if you want, sure.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Alona Kirby, Executive Director, and I think the difference is simply bulk, because what Tammy's giving you in the 1046, 1050 is over the whole program. What is the cost when we spread the cost over the whole program? There are times that we've been asked to look at costs just for, if we just provide for half a dozen people, the cost goes up because it takes X amount of time, it takes whatever. So it's all in volume. And if you think about it, when you buy in volume, you get a better price. That's exactly what's happening here. We're looking at over the whole program.
So you're saying the numbers of the past were accurate and you've just made a tremendous increase in efficiency and you're down to $10.50.
We're saying two things happened. One, we reported at a different volume in the past. Now we're giving you the total program price. So over the whole program.
So when you do that, then you need to give me the volumes so that I understand a little bit more. Is this an efficiency? This is, I know food, for example, has gotten more expensive over
Correct.
time.
Mhm.
And yet you're showing me a price that's substantially less than what you showed me last time. And there was a time when your chief financial officer was here too, and he made no sense at all to me. And I have to assume that other people would be equally confused also.
And I think part of the trouble with getting to that real cost of the per meal in the past has been, like Tammy mentioned, we have, for this particular grant, we have to submit reports to Commerce that can only show certain things. And when the contracts come in front of us, we have the dollar amount just in our contract and the number of meals or number of people that we reported on to the Department of Commerce for this grant. And so that cost is a little different than looking at the whole overall program and all of that. So I think that may have caused some confusion over time with how we're looking at that cost per meal. But we can make sure moving forward, looking at the whole program, making sure we're using the consistent method for that.
This is interesting. I've been asking for some rationalization on the price for probably half a dozen years. And I just have this radar sense that says when Gina, whom I trust, says moving forward, we can do something. I ask, why weren't we doing this before? You know, I've
Right.
always had that question.
Well, I think part of it is just when we look at some of our numbers and we do sort of that raw math in the moment, like, oh, here's the cost we see in front of us and it served this, there was this many meals. And so I think that's what's happened in the past, is just looking at it that way versus getting the holistic cost of the whole program, not just this particular grant piece.
So what was the number that was given to me before? That included something that was not allowed. I mean, I just don't understand how the numbers have moved like that.
Well, the grant has stayed the same over time, pretty consistent. It's hasn't really changed too much. The number of meals can go up and down. And so that, that affects it too when you just do that quick division of the grant divided by the number of meals.
So you're telling me that prior to COVID, you were delivering far fewer meals than you're delivering now?
One piece of that would be that during COVID, those rates went up because of, we had volume on home deliveries. We were not serving congregate. Those sites were all shut down. So I couldn't bill for any of those meals. Those weren't happening. So we did have a reduction in meals in those rural areas because our meal sites were closed.
Yeah, but I took a pre-COVID, which was about $15, and I'm taking a post-COVID, the number you give me here today,
Okay.
and I'm saying nothing has gotten cheaper in the past 3 or 4 years. Yet I'm looking at a number here that says things got a lot cheaper.
Well, I think that number that the 14 that you're talking about that was taking the grant amount divided by the meals that were reported. There were a lot more meals provided than we were allowed to report because of the way the grant was worded.
So how should the government operate if it doesn't get the proper information? I mean, you're underreporting the number of meals officially, and
That's the Department of Commerce's form that I was only allowed to provide information on new clients receiving new meals,
yeah,
not the group of them.
regardless, between us, you could tell me what the real number is. And, okay. There was, does anybody, I believe you said a number of times that there's volunteer labor almost throughout the whole program. Is that still true?
Delivery,
The deliveries volunteer, they get paid nothing at all, or they
they
get
are reimbursed mileage.
reimbursed mileage. Okay.
Yes, and it's significant.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's 60. some odd
66, I
cents.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we cover every corner of the county. Aerial, Toodle, all of it.
Yeah, no, it's. Can you read my mind? I mean, I would drive to Seattle and back if you were going to give me 65 cents a mile. I put my radio on it. I'd enjoy it. I just would like to understand where the largesse is, where the attitudes are, and what it is. I've got to answer to the public that says, we invested $1 for you and you got out of it some tangible and some intangibles. But I can't answer that question. So let me ask you, is there an external audit that happens? Is there an auditor from?
We're monitored by the state and by the Area Agency on Aging
By-
and by the county,
By ADSWA?
by ADSWA. And they include a state Medicaid.
And
Monitoring
CAP
is
in general has an A133 audit every single year. So.
Sorry, I can't understand you.
I said CAP has an A133 audit every single year, which is probably one of the most intense audits. We're required by law to have that. So between monitoring and that, all of those things are looked at.
So is the Meals on Wheels a misnomer?
I'm sorry, what?
Is Meals on Wheels a misnomer? You started out with
Our program is senior nutrition. Meals on Wheels is it's a
It's one piece of the senior nutrition program. We have senior meals and then we have the Meals on Wheels. We're primarily talking about Meals on Wheels here. That's what this contract covers,
The Meals on Wheels serves the people that are
homebound.
homebound,
Correct.
can't get out. So
Mhm.
you have other programs for people that are probably struggling financially or, I mean, we heard from a
are-
senior.
Those would be Medicaid clients that if
Okay.
they're very, very low income and on state Medicaid, then they can choose to have meal service in lieu of caregiver hours.
Okay,
Mm.
but that's just another program.
Another
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
So when you're doing this average cost, is it over the Meals
Sure.
on Wheels and the Medicaid and
All of them.
the whole thing? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so you started earlier with your presentation saying there were a whole host of things that you do in addition. This is not only a meal, but it's a health check, it's a companionship, it's any number of other things that you mentioned. And so just to be sure I understood the question you asked, that $10.50 is a division of, I paid the guys that transport the meals, I paid the guys that prepare the meals, and I divided all that with some overhead for the management. I divided all that by the number of meals I served.
Yes.
Nothing else was included, none of those other issues that you mentioned for.
No, all of
Quite
it is included. That includes That's-
Okay.
total cost. Those are all elements of the program that we are required to provide. Well,
Well, you're
not
volunteering.
specifically, but they're things that we are.
Yeah, see, I this is a trouble I have. It's called Meals on Wheels, been called Meals on Wheels, but it's yet another welfare program. And you said, I mean, there's 6 pages of agencies that are doing different welfare things. As long as we keep on untangling things, it's really hard to figure out, are we doing the right thing or the wrong thing?
You are doing the right thing. These are people that they're not so low income that they qualify for welfare programs, what you're calling welfare programs, and they don't make enough to privately bring someone in to help them with these things. So we're meeting those needs.
You and I will philosophically disagree on that.
Yes, we will.
There is no free money out there. Any money that we
I
collect-
understand, and I'm a taxpayer and I love this program, so.
Right, but as a taxpayer, you realize that you're already $96,000 in the hole. Because we don't have that money. The federal government just prints it out of thin air and somehow it gets over to us. But in order for me to justify anything, I have to say, that taxpayer over there, I'm charging you $1 so that you can feed this person. That's a big leap. So I have to look at it and say, is this something that I can stand behind to the public and say, look at what you're doing. Even though I may be philosophically against it, if I knew it was hardcore efficient, like House Law. I've supported House Law, even though in principle, I don't like the model too much, but I see they do a good job and I get my questions answered. Here, I don't know what it is that I get answered.
So I would suggest that the taxpayer in your example, paying $1 so somebody can be fed and remain in their home is saving the taxpayer another $9 a day for them being in a lot more than that, actually, being in a care facility, because we're talking about people who without the food would not be able to stay in their home and they would rely on us to pay for care.
I understand that. We've developed an ideology that is along those lines, and it's just, it leads you down a path where we are here today, just not doing very well as a society.
I know there's other programs where people can have lunch and stuff, Salvation Army, et cetera, et cetera. Anybody else that delivers, I think, or is this?
There's a Rotary Club in Woodland.
Oh,
that
that's
does
right.
Meals on Wheels. They do a version of it.
Yeah.
I mean, they do it. They do a great job, but it's on the fly, and I don't know how they determine eligibility or anything, but they also don't have to meet standards and do the piece that I have to do in order to receive the federal dollars.
Okay. In the other communities, to your knowledge, is there anybody else that delivers?
None that I'm aware of.
Like nobody else goes out to Riderwood or Castle Rock and stuff, yeah.
No.
Well, it depends on whether you want to call up the pizza parlor and have them
Well,
deliver
Uber,
pizza.
yeah,
Right.
but,
Well, you still can't DoorDash a nutritional meal for $10.50.
yeah.
Just saying.
We have had horror stories about nutritional meals, and I don't know what is real or not real.
So I did hear that at the last meeting that was brought up, that somebody had a hoard of them in their freezer. And if we are aware of that, if someone tells us that's happening, we have ways to figure out what's going on there. So we don't want that to happen. We want people to eat those meals. And if they're not, we're going to intervene and say, okay, we're cutting you back to 3 meals a week until those are down to a reasonable amount, or we're going to stop service.
So you would
but we
actually
need to-
walk into a person's house and open the refrigerator and the freezer and say, what's in
I'm
here?
sorry, say that again.
You would actually walk into someone's house and
I
say,
have.
and open their freezer without their consent?
No, with their consent, of course, they have to allow me in, but I mean, if we do in-home assessments, we go into the home, we try to determine what's going on with them and what's happening. Sometimes it's a memory issue and they put the meals in the freezer and they forget they have them, or they forget that it's dinner time and they stack up. If we can figure out what's going on behind that, we're going to try to make sure those things don't happen. I don't know all the details of the story that you heard about. I don't know that particular one, but we try our best to make sure those things aren't happening and that meals are being eaten. I mean, we actually recommend that you eat them with the week that they're delivered to you. We don't want them sitting in your freezer for a month. But yes, I have gone into homes and I've opened freezers and refrigerators and checked to see what kind of food they have, what's available to them, and tried to assess what was best for them going forward. If they can make their own food, then we try to figure out a program that delivers food boxes. If they can't get to someplace to pick those up. If they're able to ride the bike, we tell them to go to the Salvation Army for lunch and things like that. Meals on Wheels is for those that are truly vulnerable, at risk for nutritional, malnutrition, and don't have a lot of other options.
There was, I'm not sure this is germane, but I remember the very first time I was presented with Meals on Wheels, it didn't add up to me. And I voted against it. And on Facebook, I got lambasted all over the place. And then one of the particularly acrimonious individuals, I learned, he posted, if it weren't for Meals on Wheels, my mother would have starved to death, you, and a bunch of expletives about me. Okay, well, it turns out I know who the gentleman is afterwards, and I found out he's a wealthy lawyer. He could have taken care of his mom. Do you do
They
anything?
don't all the time. I mean,
I beg your pardon?
they don't always, family doesn't always take care. So that's something we have to assess, their support system. I wish it worked that way, but that's not always reality.
Yeah, are you sure that you're not giving the family an excuse then?
Not always, but I'm going to err on the side of the client and what's best for them.
Well, client, or
Yes, the client.
it's a good term.
I can't control what family does. I can control the volunteer dropping off a meal and making sure mom has something to eat.
The audits, financial audits, I'm assuming,
Yes.
probably audits on content that you're complying with feds. So they look at the food and
They look at our menus, they look at our temperature logs, they look at our delivery sheets and timing. They make sure that everyone's background checked and licenses and insurances are in place. Yeah, we have a lot of standards to meet, and those are all monitored.
I remember a discussion with Gina. If she'll remember, I'm one of those old people, can't remember things. Where I asked if she audited some of these, maybe it was a cold weather shelter or something like that, or just in general. She said, yeah, we go ahead, we check the receipts, we make sure. And I said, no, did you go and see whether the heater was there that was bought and did the serial numbers match? And the answer is no. So audit can be far more extensive than just, did you do your job? Yeah, okay.
And I will say that
I'm not, yeah, go
in
ahead.
our monitoring on auditing, they do come to our location and they go through they look through all of that stuff. It's not that they just have us send them things and say, oh, we saw that. They
Oh,
do
yeah, no,
come check.
I've actually, you toured me your building
Mhm,
5-6 years ago.
mhm.
And it was pretty impressive downstairs, and you had a bunch of high school kids that were helping out also. No, I'm thinking whenever I bump into someone who's delivered a Meals on Wheels, I ask them, what things did you experience? What things did you see? And I've gotten out of probably half a dozen such encounters, I gotten one positive that said it was a good thing. The other ones is just, yeah. So I try to do whatever I can to understand something before I jump into it.
It's interesting. That's not typically the response we get from people. They love their routes and they
Yeah.
love their people and feel
Recruiters that have
good.
been with me for 15+ years.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be less swayed by the driver unless I can get to talk to them, because at the mileage reimbursement, that is a job. It's sort of a fun job. Wouldn't you like to get paid to help people? The answer is yes. In fact, that's what you do. And that's not the self-sacrificing picture I'm painted.
Yes, and many of our drivers are seniors themselves on somewhat limited incomes as well. And some donate their checks right back to help others.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that there's any more to share. I think that from what I remember, we covered about the program when we chatted. I think we've done all that. When this will be something, is it kind of like we'll have a vote to commit to it, and then whenever the funding comes up, it'll be part of that, or is this?
Yeah, so what the state will do this year, instead of a new grant application, is they'll send an amendment to our current.
To the
contract.
current?
That
Yeah.
amendment will come to a Tuesday public meeting.
Yeah, okay. So
So I do, this is 20% that you're asking for. Where does the other 80% come from?
Older Americans Act, and I'm assuming that's what you're comparing it to, what comes from the Older Americans Act for the,
So for the most part, it comes through ADSWA?
and grants, yeah. The bulk of it. And I think, what were the figures you said initially? That grant paid for approximately 65% of our budget.
OAA, yes, over a decade ago paid 65% of the program costs, and now it's closer to 45%.
That's the one
that.
through ADSWA?
Yes.
The federal dollars. We
Yeah,
have a lot more seniors and the same amount of money.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm on the ADSWA board, so you imagine how much fun they have. No,
I'll leave
actually,
that alone.
I think Mike Reardon, I think he does a good job, and Monty was a pretty good financial guy.
And Monty and Doug communicated regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Monty did all of our
he's,
billing.
he's retiring, and we have a new person, is it,
Matt, was it Matt?
no, it's
Hmm.
Karen, maybe?
I don't know that I've met them yet.
I haven't
Like I
met the new
said, I'm one
person.
of those aged people.
There's a lot of new people at ADSA that I haven't met yet.
Yeah,
So currently about 45% through federal.
Mhm.
We're looking at 20% here from
Right.
basically from the state.
And then we apply for grants, like $10,000 here and there from different.
And the rest
foundations
is
and
you
things
guys
like-
apply
and
for grants to
fundraise
make up the
And client
other
donations. Yeah,
35 or whatever percent.
yes.
And
Gotcha.
Longview contributes a
Oh.
small
Long-
amount. as
Longview
well.
does a little bit.
Yeah.
And so do the smaller municipalities of Woodland and Kalama. They contribute a small amount as well.
Okay.
I don't have those figures in front of me, but they do.
Yeah.
I don't think we've received Woodland or Columbia.
we don't
for a
get
few
to
years.
talk much because we can't, but ADSWA is interesting. Their budget is around 30 million a year. And they actually, we've had to meet as a board to increase the amount of forget the term for it, but their expenses do not exceed the income. So they build up a reserve and then continue to grow. They have about 10 million or 12 million. And their income is completely off the taxpayer.
From grants.
Grants, typically their moneymaker is the Medicare or Medicaid. I'm still trying to learn alphabet between it and the BHO.
A lot of acronyms in what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I won't keep any longer. I asked you to come in. I appreciate that you did. I very much appreciate it. I enjoyed having the chance to talk with you both. And so I'm glad you came in and explained the program to us. Very much
Thank you for the
appreciative.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So then you'll have it for us on one of the Tuesday meetings? Okay.
one of the things I find that people don't tend to understand me is all I want is the data all laid out. And at that point, you can make a judicious choice. Do we want to do this or not do it? But if the data isn't there, and there was a lot of advertisement. Have you prepared any Meals on Wheels? No. What do you call what you take to the PR group on Thursday?
That's Mikey's meals. Yeah. Thanks, Gina.
Were you at the, were you at the meeting last night?
No,
I wasn't either.
yeah. I heard it went long. Anyway, anything else? I'm looking for hands, participants. I see none.
So we've got, oh yeah, I didn't check for you, sorry. Yeah,
I think Monday, under miscellaneous, I'll try and continue the conversation on ARPA.
Yeah, what, along the lines of,
Just seeing if Dennis has a timeline.
Yeah.
See if we can come up with something concrete.
in terms of a timeline?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Christina, we will adjourn this. Thank you for your time.